largest party of the House of Representatives, Nepali Congress, which is out of the government equation because of change in political equation after the provincial and parliament elections, has decided to contest in the presidential election. However, it remains to be seen if the Congress effort to gain support from CPN Maui Centre to secure a win in the presidential race materializes. Good evening, I'm Sarah Sapsanama. Let's begin with the top stories of the hour. 1 month in office, Prime Minister Dahal fails to give momentum to the government. Ministers busy issuing directives without clear plans. Plight of service seekers remains unchanged. Date for presidential election yet to be announced, citing contrasting legal arrangements. Nepali Congress decides to field its candidate for the election of the president. Bank loans in the private sector up by 3,700 billion rupees in the past decade, yet no improvement seen in productivity or employment opportunities. And Mohammad Adil Ansari and Mehboob Alam arrested for alleged involvement in spot fixing in Nepal 2020 tournament. Police say Cannes organizing partner 7-3 Sports also involved. Based on the act related to the election of the president and vice president, a new president must be elected within 19 days. As provisioned by the requirement to elect a new president 1 month before the expiry of the term of the sitting president, elections should be held within February 11th. However, neither the Election Commission has set a date, nor the government has paid any interest. Instead, the Commission has cited contrasting provisions in the Constitution and other laws. The act related to the election of the vice president and the president has set the provision for election for new president 1 month before the expiry of the term of the sitting president. The term of the sitting president is set to expire on March 13th. Based on the arrangement, the presidential election must be held before February 11th. However, the Election Commission appears in no rush to set a date for the presidential election. Instead, the Apex Election Authority has been delaying preparations while citing contrasting provisions in the Constitution and existing laws. Article 63 of the Constitution of Nepal has set the term of president and vice president for 5 years. Therefore, the Commission is in a state of dilemma regarding whether to allow the complete term or to hold the election as provisioned by the Act. As the Constitution is the national charter and above the Act, the Commission is in favor of allowing the complete term. Meanwhile, the government also seems to lack clarity on the presidential election. The government and the Commission have held several talks regarding the presidential election. However, none of them have been conclusive. If the election is held a month before the expiry of the term of the sitting president, the country will have 2 presidents at once, which has not been envisioned by the Constitution. Meanwhile, if the Constitution is followed for the complete 5-year term of the president, the position is likely to remain vacant for some time. The scenario has grown complicated as the government has failed in resolving the legal complications on time. Now, Nepali Congress has decided to put forward its candidate for the presidential election. A meeting of the party's former officials and senior leaders held at the residence of party president Sherbahadar Deuwa in Dhumarahi decided to field its candidate for the election of president. The meeting also decided to collaborate with other parties to ensure a victory for the party's candidate. Nepali Congress, which had extended its vote of confidence to Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal, had formed an opposition coalition for the election of Speaker and Deputy Speaker at the lower house. Nepali Congress is now strategizing for its victory in the presidential poll with the support of parties including CPN Maui Centre. Despite legal complications for timely holding of the presidential election, Nepali Congress has stressed on moving forward with collaborative efforts to resolve the complications. Now, the Federal Parliament Secretariat has given Nepali Congress the status of main opposition party. In response to the request made by Nepali Congress Parliamentary Party, the Parliament Secretariat informed that NC President Sherbahadar Deuwa will receive facilities designated to the leader of the main opposition party. Nepali Congress had been criticized, in fact, heavily for lending their support to Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal during his floor test, with voices within the parliament demanding the party be removed from the list of opposition. Tuesday this week marks the 30th day since Prime Minister Pushpakamal Dahal assumed office. During 1 month's time, the delay in expansion of the Council of Ministers and the appointment of leaders from differing political ideologies have been considered as anomalies to the current government practice. The lack of common goals and a proper design for long-term and short-term goals amongst parties at the government, analysts opine, will weaken the country's road ahead. A conflict of interest among parties that advocate for republicanism and those that stand for the return of the monarchy, both at the government, is likely to also weaken constitutional norms. Likewise, critics have called the government's Common Minimum Program as a document for mere lip service. Despite assurances of improving public services within a month's time, the plight of the service seekers have remained unchanged. Cases of violence have gone up, while the leadership seems more engaged in assemblies and programs. The Premier has appointed controversial individuals, ones without political background and also alleged of corruption, to the cabinet, making what analysts say a mockery of good governance. Likewise, the appointment of 4 Deputy Prime Minister has also been understood as an added and unnecessary burden to the state coffers. To add to the scenario, parties of the ruling alliance have, as observers put it, an increasingly fading trust among one another, suggesting that in fact, the government is unclear about the country's path ahead. In our Public Voice segment, today we've asked people in several provinces if they found any improvement in public services. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
Public Voice.
So obviously हाम्रो टाइम वेस्ट पनि भइराछ, काम पनि भइराछ न, कुरै छ बिहान देखि
भित्र स्टाफ पनि कम अनि यो 1000 रुपैयाँको चिटको लाइन तिर्न 1.5 घण्टा बस्नु पर्यो।
पहिलाको अहिले सेम छ, उस्तै छ, केही पनि सुधार भएको छैन।
अहिले त्यस्तो सुविधा त्यस्तो उता छैन, पहिले जस्तो छ त्यस्तै छ।
पैसा तिर्नुपर्ने छ, सबै हामीले चाहिँ बैंकमा तिर्न सकिहालिन्छ हैन। अब छैन, म्यानुअली गर्दियो, हेर्नुस् ताल यस्तो छ। अब
व्यवहारिक भएन के, वास्तविक हेर्दा यति लाइन मान्छे कहाँबाट कति काम हुन्छ मान्छेहरुको।
पहिला के हुन्छ चाहिँ हामी 1-8 घण्टामा हामी रिन्यु गरेर जान्थ्यौ हामी। तो अहिले के छ भने अब एउटा सामान्य रिन्यु अथवा चाहिँ लाइसेन्सिङ लागि हामी चाहिँ वर्षौ कुर्नुपर्ने।
नेपालमा सरकार परिवर्तन हुने बित्तिकै विभिन्न मन्त्रालयका मन्त्रीजीहरु र प्रधानमन्त्रीले चाहिँ निर्देशन दिने चाहिँ एउटा फेसन जस्तो भइसकेको छ।
सरल तरिकाले गरिरहेछन् कर्मचारीहरूले काम, त्यो चाहिँ पहिला त्यस्तो तरिका दुरुस्त थिएन।
त्यति धेरै लाइन बस्नु पर्दैन, त्यही हो, छिटो हुन्छ।
अहिले त अब अनलाइन सिस्टम पनि सारा कुछ भएर हातले भन्दा बढी गराउनु पर्ने, त्यो भएर अहिले चाहिँ धेरै सहज छ पहिला भन्दा।
Welcome back. The government has decided to contract private company to print textbooks for grade 1 to 5 in a bid to ensure timely delivery of the curriculum books to students. However, a few lawmakers have raised questions on the government's intention. Around 5.4 million students across 26,454 community schools need at least 22 million books on average. The Janak Education Materials Center had been printing textbooks for students of community schools. However, the scarcity of books and delayed deliveries had been affecting academic sessions each year. The private company that gets the contract will need to print 12 million books for 2.5 million 91,000 students, which is estimated to cost around 1,200 million rupees. Meanwhile, the Janak Education Material Center has been given the responsibility of printing books for students of grade 6 to 10 has procured 3 modern machines to expedite printing process. Out of the 15 million books required, the center has printed some 5 million. They've assured of timely delivery of books. However, the government has invited widespread flack for not taking the future of school students seriously, as many have given the reference of the speed at which the printing of ballot papers for the November 20 elections took place. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
But before today's question, let's take a look at the results from yesterday's poll. Yesterday, we asked you what should be done to make eye treatment easier and more accessible. 35% voted for option A, expanding services to local level, 39% for B, more qualified doctors, and 26% for C, increase awareness. And here's today's question. What's your take on the government decision to contract private company for printing textbooks for grade 1 to 5? Your options are A, commercialization of education, B, timely supply of books assured, and C, random decision. The voting is on. Type MEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Now, loans in the private sector have increased by 3,700 billion rupees in the period of 10 years. However, such loans have not contributed in economic development, creation of employment opportunities and increasing national productivity. 10 years ago, Nepal's economy figured around 1,940 billion rupees. Back then, the share of loan from banking and financial institutions in the economy measured around 973 billion rupees, which was around 49% of the entire economy. Now that the economy measures 4,851 billion rupees, the banks have released loans of 4,688 billion rupees to the private sector at almost 96% of the economy. Despite the high demand for loans in the private sector, absence of appropriate monitoring and regulation has not contributed in economic development. Targets of poverty alleviation have not been met as the private sector has failed in creating employment opportunities despite such huge funding from loans. Poverty rate of Nepal stood at 23.8% a decade back and has only reduced to 18%. Instead, the loans that have entered the private sector have resulted in the increase in price of land. 10 years ago, an anna of land used to cost 350,000 rupees in the outskirts of Kathmandu, while the rate has now skyrocketed to more than 3.5 million rupees. Imports have increased from 500 billion rupees to 1,930 billion rupees. Analysts are of the opinion that such a situation has emerged as the private sector took loans for the expansion of their industries and businesses, but invested them for other purpose, and their activities went unchecked by monitoring and regulation entities. Around 1,800 Nepali youths are compelled to leave Nepal every day to seek employment opportunities elsewhere. In the period of a decade, remittance has increased from 434 billion rupees to 1,007 billion rupees only. Despite increasing deposits at BFIs, remittance has only been spent in unproductive sector. The refinancing provided during the coronavirus pandemic to sustain the environment for entrepreneurship was also spent in unproductive sector. Even the Nepal Rashtra Bank does not seem to have taken such matters seriously. In addition to the absence of policies focused on productivity, failure in introducing a monetary policy which could prioritize increasing production has also led to the situation where the increase in loans from banks in the private sector has not helped Nepal's economic development. It's time now for the sports update.
Sports news.
Record holder former Nepal national team player Mehboob Alam and emerging player Muhammad Adil Ansari have been arrested by the Central Investigation Bureau CIB for their involvement in fixing in the recently concluded Nepal 2020 League. Nepal Police, which is investigating 7 foreign and 3 Nepali players, is now making preparations to nab the entire network of fixers with the inputs from Mehboob and Alam. Police arrested national team member Adil and from Rajbiraz of Saptari while he was playing cricket, while former national team player Mehboob was arrested from Biratnagar for the involvement in spot fixing at the Nepal T20. Police investigation has found that both individuals were in regular contact with the organizers and their bank accounts showed amount with no clear sources. Adil had played for Janakpur Royals in the Nepal 2020 League. Police had begun investigations on the basis of a no-ball bowled by Adil in Janakpur's league stage match against Far West United. Of the 12 matches in fact played by Janakpur, Adil had featured in 8 of them. All-rounder Adil was seen as one of the future stars of Nepal national team. Having made a name for himself in a short period of time, Adil plays domestic cricket from Madhya province. 19-year-old Adil had made his senior international debut for Nepal on the 31st of March last year in the T20 international match played against Papua New Guinea. Adil was noted for his quick-fire innings in that match, where he scored 31 runs from only 11 deliveries. He then went on to make his ODI debut against the US on June 11th. Meanwhile, Mehboob Alam is a record holder, having made his debut for Nepal back in the year 2000. Alam had picked all 10 wickets in the World Cricket League Division 5 match against Mozambique in 2008. He had last played for Nepal in 2017. Police have claimed that the decorated former player Mehboob was involved in making proposals for fixing, while it is also investigating another Nepali player. Founder of the 7-3 Sports, the strategic and commercial partner of the Nepal T20, Jatin Aluwalia had gone out of contact before the CIB began its investigation into the fixing scandal. CIB has said that foreign players had also left Nepal by then. Meanwhile, the National Cricket Governing Body, Cricket Association of Nepal (CAN), had claimed that fixing allegations at the Nepal T20 League held between December 24 to January 11 at the Tribhuvan University Cricket Ground in Kantipur were baseless. While this is the first fixing incident in Nepali cricket, it is not the first in Nepali sports. Prior to this, 5 Nepali football players and coach were arrested 7 years ago. In the absence of laws related to fixing, case for betraying the nation was filed against them back then. A new law was then formulated which termed fixing a crime. If found guilty, the court may slap a sentence of 3 years and a fine of up to 30,000 rupees. Nepal police has claimed that the entire league was organized for betting and the nexus of fixers was active throughout the tournament. It is imperative for arresting those involved in fixing, which severely damages the national sports sector. Moving on, departmental team Armed Police Force have secured their second successive win in the men's category of the Tiger Cup Club Volleyball Tournament. In the second match, APF saw off Nepal Police Club in 4 sets. Prior to this, APF had seen off Army. In the match played at the volleyball court of the Pokhara Stadium, APF had won the first set 25-19 before police made a comeback to secure 25-21 win. However, APF won the next 2 sets 25-19 and 25-18 to maintain their winning run. With 2 wins in 2 matches, APF have 6 points and are atop the standings, while police are without a point with 2 defeats. In another match played today, defending champions Army saw off Sri Lankan side St. Joseph in straight sets. Army secured a 25-20, 25-17, 25-10 win to earn 3 points. Defending champions Armed Police Force have marked a winning start in the women's category of the Tiger Cup Invitational Volleyball Tournament. APF secured a straight set victory over organizers Gandaki province. In the match played at the volleyball court of the Pokhara Stadium, APF won the first 2 sets with an identical score of 25-19, while the departmental side secured 25-16 win in the 3rd set. The Gandaki province team included 3 Indian players. However, even their presence did not ensure a good performance from the hosts. With the win, APF have 3 points. Prior to this, Army had secured a win over New Diamond Academy. With APF, Army, Gandaki and New Diamond, 4 teams are competing at the tournament. Up next is the weather update.